Could you introduce yourself and share where you applied for the non-lucrative visa?
Myself and my wife both have applied for our non-lucrative visas with BLS in London.
And what initially prompted you to apply for this visa?
We have property in the north of Spain that we purchased in 2009 whilst we were working overseas. Our aim was to retire to the property, which we've had refurbished over the years. Brexit then put a stop on that. Plus, we needed to come back to the UK to look after my aging mother, who passed away last year. So we're now ready to move forward and go to Spain and live out and, retire. What was our dream?
So you already had a home in northern Spain, but for example, for people who are still not established, could you give us some tips for choosing a destination within Spain?
Well, I don't know about tips. My wife and I originally moved back from the Middle East to the Malaga region in the hills near Malaga, with the aim of sort of retiring there. Unfortunately, we found that all the people around us were people from the UK. They weren't Spanish people. And the way of life just seemed like, a hot version of the UK. So we sat down, looked at a map of Spain. How far can we get away from the Costa del Sol? Top left-hand corner. That looked about as far as possible. We took a drive up for a week, fell in love with the area, and then started looking for a property, which we found.
If you want to be far away from, let's say, the British areas, you need to not to retire in the south or southeast of Spain, for sure. You would need to look towards Galicia, to the northwest.
Yeah, from I would say from the middle of Spain up to the north coast. Yeah, most of the British or most people go to the holiday destinations, in my opinion, from what I've seen. We didn't want the hustle and bustle of that. We wanted to live and we're countryside people, and we wanted to live in the countryside, a normal life amongst the local people, rather than the sort of the bars and the restaurants from the UK that have sprung up along the south coast.
So in general, what were the most important documents for your non-lucrative visa application? Maybe the ones that took you most time, the ones that were more difficult, the ones that you would recommend starting with?
We did everything ourselves. We looked at using, one of the lawyers or businesses, but I soon realised that although we could use them, we were still going to have to supply them with all the information, which we'd have to gather ourselves anyway. So I couldn't see the sense in paying somebody to do it when we were really going to have to do it ourselves in the first place. So we set about it. We looked online on the Consulate website for the paperwork we needed. We made a list, and then we looked at how long each one of those documents was valid for, like our police check certificate, health certificates. So we aimed at getting everything done so that it would all be valid for the time period when we would submit it. The one hiccup we had was our marriage certificate. We were married in Tobago. And all the official documents like police certificate, health certificate, marriage certificate, etc., they have to be apostolized.
Correct.
You have to get the apostle done in the country that the document was issued in. So everything apart from our marriage certificate could be done in the UK. We found that we had to contact the Trinidad and Tobago Consulate in London, who were very helpful to get our wedding certificate, marriage certificate apostolized, and that took 6 or 7 weeks to do.
The certificates, usually they have a validity period. It would be extremely easy if you just can use the certificates anytime in the future after you get them. But unfortunately, they give you a window of validity that has to be applying when you go to the appointment or you submit the documentation.
That's right. It was about 3 months, I think it was, for some of the, like the police check and the health certificate. I think they were about 3 months. So, you know, we had everything apart from our marriage certificate ready to go. Fortunately, that came in on time. We managed to get quite a quick appointment with BLS in London, went up, and then it was very straightforward then, because we had everything that they had asked for laid out in little separate sleeves ready to give them. So as they asked for them, we just took that one out, gave them the bits. It was all about being organized, you know.
And did it help that you already knew Spain well? Let's say, like, having a property in Spain and having spent time in Spain and being in touch, let's say, with the culture and eventually with the bureaucracy in previous years. Do you think it helped?
I think so, because from 2009 up to date, we've been constantly investing in our property, employing Spanish builders, other tradesmen, doing work on our property. So yeah, I think that was quite useful. Obviously, we already had our own NIE. They could obviously link that in to everything. I wrote a covering letter, although it wasn't required, explaining, you know, when we purchased our property, and what our intentions were, you know, that we wanted to retire there. And, you know, we had been invested in Spain for a while now. Yeah.
Can you recall how long it took from, let's say, your document preparation phase till appointment and visa issue?
I think we started getting everything together in February, and we had our appointment in April. From our appointment at BLS in London, 13 days later, we had notification saying that our passports were being returned. And we panicked because we thought most people were saying 3 to 6 months. And we panicked. We thought something's wrong. Our passports arrived the next day. So that was a total of 14 days from attending the BLS in London. And our passports arrived with the visas in them. We were concerned that when we had the emails or the text message saying our passports were being returned, that we'd been rejected or there was an issue with the paperwork.
Because it was too fast.
Yeah, it would just seem, 13 days. We just followed everything that they required.
Yeah.
And the only extra thing that we put in was just a covering letter, which wasn't really asked for. But for the financial requirements, I had my bank statements. But what I did with my bank statements, when I went into the bank, I asked the bank for 6 months worth of deposits, okay, and to remove all of the debits, everything I was paying out. So it was quite easy for them to see where the money came in from. The bank stamped them and signed, certified them, those documents. And then I also provided my pension statements where I color-coded the payment on the bank statement and the same on each pension payment to reference it so they could easily cross-reference it.
So you were already a pensionist when you applied for the non-lucrative visa. You didn't have to quit your job or promise you were going to do it.
No, I'm not on a state pension. I have my own private pensions and a military pension. Yeah, I provided my pension statements, which was, I think, E60 or something. I forget.
Did you apply using your S1 form to access the public healthcare in Spain, or you hired a private health insurance?
No, I'm not old enough yet to apply for the S1 because I'm only 62. We've both taken out private health insurance with Sanitas, who we found be excellent to deal with.
About the medical certificate, do you remember how you arranged obtaining one?
We did it online. In the UK first, we went and got our health documents and then did the health certificate application with, I think it was ZoomDoc.
Okay, you use ZoomDoc, okay, which is an online service.
Yeah, that came through. We then got that certificate apostolized along with our police check and others at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK.
Yeah.
For all the UK documents, and others at the foreign, and those were supplied. We then forwarded
translated as well, like sworn translated.
Yes, we got all the documents were sworn translated. I used an online service for that. I forget the name of it now. And basically, for the sworn translations, all I had to do was scan, email, and forward the documents that were required.
But what tips can you offer for navigating this appointment and interview process at the consulate?
Well, when we applied, we were told just to go straight to if there was a queue outside the door, go straight to the door, show our paperwork and go in, which we did, because there were a lot of students queuing up for student visas. The NLV visa was treated differently. When we went in, we were just given a bit of paper to sign and a number and told to wait, which we did. And we were waiting for quite some time. And then I think there is some sort of service that we missed out on, because somebody came up to us and then apologized and took us straight to a desk, where we provided the bits and pieces of paper, everything that was required. It was checked off by the girl at the desk. We then had to pay the fee, which was paid, and that was it. We were done, out and gone.
What would you have done differently in your application process, knowing what you know now?
I would have got our wedding certificate organised first, because that was the one that got us twitching. But everything else, I don't think we would change anything. My wife sat there shaking her head. Yeah, no, nothing. The way we set it out and went about it, it all worked well.
How useful was Spainguru's Facebook group for your NLV process?
Yeah, all of the Facebook groups we were looking at were invaluable, giving us lots of tips. Mm-hmm. I would highly recommend to anybody. No, I don't mean to be funny, but don't just look at one. Look at a lot of them and see the different tips. But be aware that obviously for people in the UK, things are different than for people from the US, for instance. There are a lot of people from the US that seem to have a lot of different requirements than there are from those in the UK. And judging from what I've seen, I think BLS London seems to be a little bit more efficient or easier to deal with than BLS Manchester, for instance.
I guess also the importance of having fresh information, updated information, because things change quite often.
Yes, yeah, your group was great.
How did you prepare regarding tax implications?
Worth thinking about for people, especially from, is taking into consideration when you're going to move, especially if you're selling the property where you are, with regards to capital gains tax. That was something I wasn't aware of until we were in the application process. But fortunately, when we had our interview and they asked the date that we wished to move, then I actually was able to say, right, okay, we'll go on the first, the visa to start on the 1st of July. And we're actually traveling over to our property now on the 20th, because we've already been in Spain earlier in the year. Correct. to make sure that those days didn't, take us over the 183 days.
Correct, because the days that you are in Spain physically during a calendar year, they all count. If you were 10 days at the beginning of the year, then 10 days in the summer, and then you move to Spain and you spend, and the total amount is over 183 days, you become a tax resident in Spain for that year since January 1st until December 31st.
We knew that we had to, if we went before July, we would definitely be tax residents. I think it was like the 3rd or the 4th gives you 183 days. And because we'd spent a week in Spain, then we just aimed off and said, right, okay, the 20th keeps us well clear. So that's when we're actually flying out on the 20th now. So all done. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you sell, for example, your house or any kind of assets and you are a tax resident in Spain during that year, that becomes a, let's say, taxable event in the eyes of the Spanish taxman. So you want to avoid that by not becoming tax resident in the same year where that happens. So you need to follow strategies in order to avoid that.
You really need to look and think about your tax responsibilities if you're selling property, and before you move, or even transferring big sums of money from your savings. It's all going to be looked at. Whereas if we're not tax residents this year, but we will be from the 1st of January next year. So and which all fits quite nicely.
Exactly. In the end, there is a double, like a taxation treaty between the United Kingdom and Spain, and you will be credited the amount that you pay taxes in Spain. But of course, if you sell your house, that's let's say a pretty unique event. Okay, a pretty unique event that you will probably want to avoid paying capital gains tax in Spain. That likely it's a higher tax than in the UK, right? So you will still have to pay taxes in the UK, but of course you don't want to pay higher taxes in Spain before, just to be credited over what you have paid in the UK, if that makes sense.
And the other thing is, like, because I have UK pensions, government pensions, then I'm taxed on those in the UK, so I won't be double taxed on those in Spain as well, which is worth making a note of. Whereas if they were a private commercial pension, then I would get taxed in Spain on those.
And you mentioned that, for example, for the non-lucrative visa application, you did it yourself. What about tax advisory? Did you use professional tax advisory to understand the implications of your move to Spain?
No, I looked it up myself and was quite happy with what I found. And when we get over, I will use a Spanish accountant for my tax next year. I will use a Spanish accountant to make sure next year, when I fall under the Spanish tax obligation, I will make sure that it's done properly, rather than try and do it myself, because I think it is a minefield when you've actually got to start paying the taxes. It needs to be done properly and by a professional. I think paying a professional will be cheaper in the long run, will save me a lot of heartache.
And what advice would you give to someone just starting to considering applying for the non-lucrative visa?
Firstly, look at the financial implications. Okay, make sure that you are, financially viable, A, to apply for the visa, and B, that you've got the finances to keep you going. And remember that year 2 and 3, you've got to have double the finances, and same for 4 and 5. So you need to make sure that you've got a good financial backing, a nice fallback to make sure that you can live there without suddenly realizing that, hey, I need to earn some money. Okay, it's cheaper to live in Spain than in the UK. Okay, but that's if you've got your own property and you're mortgage free, like we are, then we've only got our cost of living expenses to worry about. But think about if you're going to be renting or purchasing or taking a mortgage, you need to have a buffer, something behind you, as well. Make sure you've got some breathing space, because I think in the world, a lot of things are changing financially.
It depends a lot, of course, on the location, where you choose to go to live, because some areas are becoming quite expensive, at least for Spanish standards. Be careful with that.
One of the other things, when we bought our property in the north of Spain, it was very cheap. Okay. When we were over earlier this year, talking to our Spanish builder, he was telling us that now there are a lot of people wanting to move from the south to the north, and the house prices are increasing due to the hot weather and the lack of water.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the help your website's given us as well.
Oh, and one more thing. Apparently YouTube says you're gonna love watching this video right here. I think you should watch it